What is happening there, J Gamer Dude here, and I'm going to be going through the 8 shows I watched during the summer 2023 anime season. You know, that sort of weekly watch. So I just do like weekly, sort of watch of whatever the newest episode is, and come back and talk about what it is that I watched and how I felt about it. So, first and foremost, I'm going to be talking about Masamune-kun no Revenge. So, this is an interesting show because it originally aired in the original season 2017, I want to say, 2018. Roughly speaking, did not think it would get a second season. It certainly did, and it covers the remainder of the story, so there's no way in hell there's going to be like a third season or anything. From what I'm aware, the manga is actually pretty short, and I thought that this was a fine show. I don't really have much to say about it because all in all, it's just a little bit too similar to most rom-coms that we kind of see of the idea of the whole show being that the main character hates the main girl because he was betrayed by her when they were both little, and then things just kind of led off on that from the first episode where he used to be a fatso and now he kind of growing up became more of a gym buff, and now is a really good looking guy, but ultimately his sights were set on making her cry, this main girl that he knew as a child. And yeah, it just kind of goes off from there. It's a little bit too sort of paint by numbers when it comes down to it, especially down to its conclusion, which I'm not going to go too much into, but if you know, you know. All in all, it was a fine show. For the second season, there wasn't as much mental gymnastics required compared to the first season, so this was definitely okay, albeit that it looks a bit better. I'm going to be slotting this into my anime list at a 6 out of 10. It's just far too similar, but if nothing else, its interesting premise was brought to an end, so it does feel like there was a conclusive ending to that first season from so many years ago that I feel did deserve some sort of closure, because it just felt very ham-fisted of an ending, especially with the single episode OVA that we got, and I did actually talk about and review before the season began, so I'll be sure to link that into the the description below, and I'll also be listing all of these shows that I'm going to be talking about in the description as well. Moving on from that to something that is significantly more hype, and one that I've been very excited for the season, is Bungo Stray Dogs Season 5. And the hype around the show for me was largely because I had actually watched each season one after another until I finished Season 4. And we were left in a very precarious position where the main characters are up against an enemy. They don't know who that enemy is. We did not know who that enemy was or what they were all about. We just knew that they were out for blood against the investigation crew, the detective agency. So essentially, this season does cover off who the villains are, why they're doing it, and ultimately the conclusion of this fight, which then kind of leads into immediately the next thing. So there is going to be another season of Bungo Stray Dogs after this. There's a lot of mental gymnastics compared to the previous show that you do need to get through. There's a lot of hoop jumping in terms of logic, and it does kind of make sense to an extent. It's just that watching it week by week does make it a weaker way of watching it, and it's probably better that you watch this in its entirety back to back, so that you have a much firmer idea of who's on your side, what's happened, because okay, without going too much into spoilers, the show is mainly surrounding how you try and beat an enemy that seems almost unbeatable, and when you think you finally have a solution on how to beat them, they then pull out another trick up their sleeve, and then whatever you think you did beneficial before is now used against you instead, and that seems to happen quite a lot. So it's interesting just how all of that kind of comes together. How do you beat an enemy that is genuinely unbeatable? The animation style is absolutely incredible. The fights are great. I did not actually like the opening theme. It did feel a little bit lazy, and also it's not really my genre of music. It feels more sort of this sort of heavy rock, almost going to metal in a way. The ending theme, on the other hand, I thought was alright. There isn't really much for me to say in regards to that. So while the opening was weak for me, the animation style was pretty solid. There's a lot of really good characters, some that are newly introduced, of course, in the season. I had a lot of fun watching this show, and I do genuinely think that this was a great season of television. So unfortunately, it only had 11 episodes. Kind of wish we had one more, but we can only really get so much. This one, I'm squarely putting a very good on this and putting it at an 8 out of 10 on my anime list. Had a lot of fun. It was a great show. It continues on. I like the hype from the end of season 4 going into season 5 was high, because we were left in that sort of position of like, ooh, what's gonna happen next, or can't wait to see what happens next. If I feel like we have been given a little too much info at the end of that sort of final episode, but we'll have to kind of see how that goes. So I'm not too high on starting the next season, but I am looking forward to it when it does happen to drop. Moving on from that to a show that I didn't actually want to watch, but I said I was going to, merely out of just sheer curiosity, and a morbid one at that. And this may be the most bland thing I've seen this season, without a doubt. And that is 自動販売機に生まれ変わった俺は名教をさまよう。さまよう。さまよう? Yeah, さまよう. So, wandering the dungeon as a vending machine. So, Reborn is a vending machine based off of the manga of the exact same name. The opening theme was alright. I think the artist behind it, I think I almost guessed his name. I think it was Hoshino Gen for some reason. I could be wrong about that. I need to double check that. But essentially, the opening was fine. The ending was clever. I'll give it that. I didn't like it, but it was that. If nothing else, it was clever. So, opening, ending themes, you really genuine give or take on that one. But I think what you can never deny is that the main character is a vending machine. He can't talk. All he can say are words that are stock phrases for a vending machine that you would expect to see in Japan. And that's about it. So somehow, in some leap of logic, the first character that finds him, she manages to turn what he says into some sort of language. The whole idea about being a magical tool that somehow has also the soul of a human being, that somehow came up. Even though all of this sounds kind of cool, the delivery of everything, the location itself feels incredibly bland. The reason why is because I feel like we've seen these fantasy locations way too much. It's nice to be able to see fantasy locations, and sometimes it's better to focus on one than to go through the whole rigmarole of being like, okay, we're going to go to a desert, now we're going to go to a forest, now we're going to go to, I don't know, underwater, and then we're going to go to hell at some point. Why not? The thing about the show is that I feel like every character is a background character that was forced to become a main character or supporting character. And even those background characters are then background characters of background characters. Everyone is kind of like a cardboard cutout of what they should be like. Except for the main girl. She's the only one. And even then, she isn't all that appealing. All she carries is a nice rack, and that's about it. That's all she's got going for her. The main character is an immovable object. Though the only way he's able to move around is because Meat for Brain's main girl has the ability to carry things that are incredibly heavy, thanks to the sort of blessing of might that she carries. And that may very well be the only really unique point of the show, is that main girl has a blessing that makes her super strong physically speaking, but doesn't show it visually. It's just a kind of a, this is the thing that happens. And so that's the only way the main character is able to get around. Unless he falls through the floor due to how heavy vending machines can be. But that's besides the point. This is a very bland show. And it's kind of about as average as it can get. I'm slotting this in at a 5 out of 10. I can't even be, like... I feel like I need to get worked up in order for something to even be considered bad. And this one just does not encourage any sort of yay or nay on my part, to be completely honest, so it is what it is. Moving on from that, we have Atelier Ryza. Ryza no Atelier, Tokoyami no Joon to Himitsu to Kagurega. So, this is based off of the first of 3 Ryza games that came out. So, Atelier Ryza had 3 games. So Ryza had 3 games: Atelier Ryza, Atelier Ryza 2, Atelier Ryza 3. This is based off of the first game, and it's a fairly good adaptation of the plot to an extent. There are some additional things in there, which is really nice to see. And this show reminds me of why I like Atelier games, is that no matter how mundane the events are, no matter how much convolution you could chuck in there, which really probably wouldn't even add much, but like, you could make the most plain, blandest plot for an Atelier game, and I would be all in on it, because the characters are always well written. The characters are always well put together, their characterizations are always well done, and they're always entertaining. Atelier Ryza is, to some and many people, their favorite Ateliers. Is it mine? It is bloody well close, but not personally. I would say second favorite, but definitely not the cream, like not the 100% top for me. So, but this show might very well have made it like the top for me. It was very entertaining to watch. Again, there is some level of a plot going on, but it's vaguely there, and it doesn't really matter, because again, at the end of the day, the characters are so well acted, the characters are so well written, their characterizations are so well done, that I just can't help but look at the whole thing and be like, man, I had such a good time watching this show, which is such a massive like shift from the isekai that I just talked about with the main character being a vending machine, that even though it's written so plainly, the characters just aren't. There's no characters there. It was just cardboard cutouts. But there are no cardboard cutouts here. It's just genuinely a group of idiots trying to do stuff together. And I feel like I can't say enough good things about that. That I'm slotting it at a, like, while I sound pretty high on it, I'm chucking that in at a 7 out of 10 on my anime list. I had a lot of fun watching this. The opening was actually quite entertaining, and so was the ending, actually. You know what? Both of it was actually quite entertaining. Had a fun time on both ends. So, yeah, I have nothing more to say. It's just a really nice time. The only concession that I would say would need to be made is to just switch your brain off. And as long as you like slice of life shows, you will like this show, without a doubt. Now, moving on to a show that I thought I would actually hate from the beginning is Liar Liar. Now, when I thought of Liar Liar, I immediately thought of stuff like Osama Game or Liar Game, where you have like the main character who exists to fool everyone else in order to win a game where people who lose generally will either die or something very horrible happens to them of equal capacity. We're probably not talking like the level of like a Saw movie or anything, but you know, it generally tends to kind of go around in that way, with a lot of betrayal and things like that. The thing about Liar Liar is that it's not that. It's not that at all. In fact, I thought it was actually much better than those things. I was pleasantly surprised by about the first 3 to 4 episodes in, being like, this is absolutely not what I had expected. And so essentially it follows the main character who happens to steal a colored star. So stars represent the rank of a player in this school where people exist to challenge each other through games, similar to No Game No Life in that sense, except that if you win a star from that person, and then you go up a rank. The maximum number of stars you can carry is 7. However, there are 7 characters in the show that participate in this game that have a colored star, and those colored stars do represent the level of 1 star. However, there is, in order to people who have those stars generally are either very highly ranked, but they also have a lie that they try to protect. And so for the main character, his lie is that he is a 7 star because he accidentally took a colored star from the main girl who is on the right over here with the red hair. He takes a colored star from her, and so his lie is that he is a 7 star, which is the highest rank, in order to just say to everyone, I am the strongest in the school, come at me, bro. And it just kind of leads into very interesting sort of situations beyond that point. The final game, however, was a little bit weak and does cover off the last 3 to 4 episodes of the actual season itself, because it doesn't feel like as big or as climactic of an event, because I feel like it's dragged out for way too long. It's an interesting show, however, some of the characterizations can feel a little bit too obvious. The maid, on the other hand, so the white-haired girl on the left, I think she was probably my favorite character of the entire show, but there are also some very annoying characters. Akizuki Noa is definitely the one that comes to mind when I think about the show, but yeah. So it just kind of leads off in that way. So think of it as some level of lying to every character in the show in a similar way to say Liar Game, except it's more treated with the seriousness of a No Game No Life, maybe slightly more than that, but that's kind of a weird mix. I did find this kind of entertaining, so I'll give it that much. See, I'm struggling whether or not I want to give it a 6 or a 7, but I'll give it a 7 because it was entertaining enough for me to say it was a good show. Albeit that even though the last game was still pretty weak. Moving on from that though to Eiyuu Kyoushitsu, Hero Classroom. So this is a show that surrounds the main character Blade, who is a hero essentially. He is the great hero, but after beating the Demon Lord, he lost his powers, or a decent chunk of it, but he is still an overpowered menace to society, and so he goes to school that is intended for heroes who are aspiring, or people who are aspiring to be heroes, and they kind of become, or can to some extent, destined to become heroes. Now the thing about this show is that the main character is just trying to hide in plain view as a normal person. So the normalcy of just going to school, because he's just kind of done with the whole sort of hero business. And he does manage to do that, and then meets a bunch of interesting characters along the way, and it just kind of evolves from there. There's no sort of real overarching plot besides main character tries to hide in plain view at a school full of heroes as the great hero that he once was. And throughout the episodes he does get a little bit of his powers back, but not by much. And he does showcase his immense power that he still has in front of everyone, but thankfully they're all sort of dumb as rocks, so if nothing else we can at least appreciate that much. It's really more of a slice of life that's just sort of an enjoyable watch. Again, if you just switch your brain off, it is about as, if not more so, entertaining there, Atelier Ryza, where there's no real plot, there's not much going on, but the characters are pretty on point for who they are and what they do. So this show actually falls very similarly to a 7 out of 10 for me on this one as well. I did actually quite enjoy this show, without a doubt. Moving on from that though, we have Uchi no kaisha no chisai senpai no hanashi, which is just office lady, the office lady version of Uzaki, except not annoying. Because while the office lady sort of archetype of individuals can have their sort of charm in a way, we're talking about one who is really short and also has a massive rack to, I don't know, fetishize, I suppose. All in all, it was an okay show. I don't really think there's much to say because the opening is like kind of fun to like, you know, sit down, listen to, and even watch. The ending theme, actually I don't remember the ending theme, so that's probably more of a strike against because it's not memorable enough for me to like, you know, stick to memory, given that this is actually the last show that I watched before actually starting to record this video, because I wanted to make sure I had actually watched all of the shows, all the episodes, and then actually record the video, or this video rather. So it's fun, it's fine. I feel like I feel like the two side characters are actually the real main characters. So in this case, it's Hayakawa, which is this yellow-haired girl, and this white-haired guy who everyone refers to as Shunin because he's like the boss man for pretty much our cast of characters here on this promotional image. But yeah, essentially, like, I feel like those two are more so the main characters than the actual main characters themselves, being these two in the middle. It's really, you know, hard to tell, because I feel like the show kind of like loses the plot fairly quickly and feels like it can be a bit of a jumbled mess in terms of like where the show is focused, like who the show is supposed to be focusing on, and whether or not there are actually any genuine strides into any particular romance that is being, you know, sort of made. It's all fairly referential and can get, surprisingly enough, this is the first time I'm actually using this word, despite the blandness of the isekai, it does come off as a little bit boring to an extent. I feel like there's no real flair to it compared to like other shows like Uzaki, which is just like someone who is really uzai or really loud and annoying, or say Nagato-san being like just tan, like a tan girl. Why not, right? And she's also incredibly athletic. In this case, we've got Office Lady, but the whole idea of the Office Lady isn't really doing much in this show or series whatsoever, so I don't know why you'd want to use that as the overall point. It's still better than the Vending Machine Isekai, so this I think squarely falls at the sort of 6 out of 10. It's fine, it exists, we cool. I don't know what else we want to say or do on that one, but you know, that it feels so plain as well. No, it doesn't feel so plain, it just feels somewhat plain. Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to. And then finally we have Tenpuru. Now I made a video about the show, which I will also like link into the description below. I had a lot of fun watching this. It brings me back to the late 2000s, early 2010s, where we had a lot of ecchi shows. Granted, you know, it's not like, you know, tits out and everything else in between, but it was just like using fan service in a way that is more, you know, sort of centered towards what's it called, more sort of in a comedic manner. And so that's kind of how it was intended to be taken, is more of a punchline and less so of an actual, you know, serious thing, or really just used even in a lewd way or anything, because the main character Akagami is trying to, you know, relieve himself of like all sort of worldly possessions, beings, wants, and everything else in between, in order to make himself better. So he offers to be, you know, goes to this temple, which was actually turned into a nunnery a while back, but, you know, they kind of are in a very, very rough spot, and so they kind of like they need all the help that they can get, especially from like sort of financial point of view. And then it's kind of like the situation behind the Mikazuchi Temple, which is the name of the temple, that kind of brings everyone together and kind of moves the story forward. But also each of the girls kind of have their own agenda regarding Akagami being kind of like involved with the temple in any way or capacity. And also, not him, but his dad has history with the temple that kind of like leads him into the position that he is in. Anyways, so it's pretty entertaining. The opening is fine. The ending is okay. I really don't have any sort of strong feelings on either of those things. But this show is actually genuinely entertaining and kind of fun to just sit down and watch. It doesn't do anything great. It is just great. Like, it is a great time waster. If you like ecchi, if you missed that period of time between 2008 and 2013 of just ecchi shows, this is actually a pretty great recommendation. Like, I can't say that enough. I had a great time watching this show. Will I say that it's a great show? No, I'm not. But it's still a good show nonetheless. So I feel like this show is also going to be falling in that sort of average spot that all of the other, quite a lot of shows have filled into, of it just being good. Like, I feel like the average across all the shows this season that I've watched, they generally tend to be good. I haven't watched anything horrendously bad, but then again, when it comes to isekais, if I want to watch something bad, at least I know where to look. In this case, it just turned out to be too terribly bland that I couldn't even be bothered to get worked up about, unlike, say, the smartphone isekai. This show is definitely giving a solid 7 out of 10 from me. It is a good show. It is entertaining enough. It doesn't do anything particularly bad. In fact, I don't think it really does anything bad. It's just the opening and endings are just plain, but the rest of it is just so genuinely entertaining that I couldn't help but keep watching. And again, it's just about how the characters were written and less so to do with the overarching story that was going on. Even though that is still there, it's still fun to kind of like harken back to every now and again. But yeah, I feel like quite a lot of what I said is pretty samey across about 3 or 4 shows this season. But I feel like that's just kind of how it's been. This has been fairly good. And really about it. So that's what I thought about these shows this season. Let me know what you guys thought about some of these shows that I've talked about. Of course, try and keep it as spoiler free as possible. Chuck them into the comments below. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel because I'm trying to get to 100 subs by the end of the year. But also I want my videos to get recommended to more people on YouTube. So that would definitely be much appreciated. But with all that said and done, I do upload every day, so I'll see you guys tomorrow.